Hi, my name is Mike Moores, and I work on the Connections team here in North County. My favorite parable is mentioned in Matthew chapter 13. It's verses 5 and 6, which tells of a farmer who went to sow his seed. As he was sowing the seed, some of the seed fell on rocky places where did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no roots. This really describes my early Christian walk. I now realize that as a baby Christian, I needed to be fed. I needed to hear the gospel. I needed Christian friends to stand by me and teach me. Years later, I started attending North County, and that really helped me grow as a Christian and have a meaningful relationship with Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior.
Good morning. If you don't know, you don't grow. If you don't know, you don't grow. Say it with me, because it rhymes. If you don't know, you don't grow. Got it? Okay. It's a principle in life that all of us share in some aspect or another. I can't make any good necessary changes in my life if I don't first know the changes that need to happen. So I can't fix anything if I don't know it's broken, right? And it's because of that I would actually like to be a little vulnerable again with you this morning. That's what I like to do. I have discovered I have a problem in my life, a problem that has caused me a lot of pain. And I've made a lot of changes over the last couple months, and I've talked with my wife. We have a plan, and I'm happy to say I'm seeing, we're seeing progress, and it's really good. And how about instead of explaining it, a picture will communicate better. This is my burden right now. Yeah, I can tell you're feeling it with me. Now, this is my lawn. And before you scoff and continue laughing, let me explain to you the gravity of this situation. Because Linden has long been known for not only its abundance of churches, but its beautiful, pristine, golf green lawns. Am I right? And folks, I'm from here. I grew up here. My dad grew up here. His dad grew up here. If we all wanted a field trip, I could take you down the Jackman Road and show you where my great-great-grandpa raised all 10 of his children. Dear goodness. So make no mistake, I have Linden in my bones. It's in my blood. And that's why I have this innate sense and this deep responsibility to make my lawn awesome. Do you feel me? Yeah. Yes, amen, glory. So I've been working at it, and this is the problem that my wife and I have been attacking. And so over the last few years, what I've done is I'll mow and I'll water, and periodically I will, when I want to pay for it, I will fertilize. And I felt like I was doing everything that was needed to be done, and then spring came. And I looked at my yard, and I was so discouraged, because that looks terrible. And I was like, what do I do? So I ended up finding a plan, figuring out what to do, and I'm happy to say that we're actually seeing progress. Yes, this picture is from yesterday, but trust me, it's better than it was a couple months ago, let me tell you. So I found what to do, and we're making progress, and it's great. Now, here's the thing. Do you guys want to know what I did that helped me find out what to do? Yeah. You want to know the secret? You got a pen? Yeah. Okay. I looked at it. Yeah, that's it. I looked at it. I went out to my yard, and I thoughtfully looked at the grass and at the soil, figured out what was wrong, talked to some people, and got a plan. And things are progressing. So we're aerating now, we're topsoiling. TJ, thank you for the rake if you're here today. We're doing all sorts of things, and we're seeing progress. And all it took was a look, because what do we know? If you don't know, then you don't grow. And I couldn't fix my lawn if I didn't first know what was wrong. Right. And it's kind of funny because now I think about that, all of this frustration I went through over the last while really could have been fixed by just a simple 5-minute walk out to my lawn. And I'm happy, but at the same time I look at it kind of like, boy, that's all I needed to do. And it made me think, what other things am I suffering through in my life that would simply just take a small look? And I bet you're all thinking of different things that you could do as well, little things that we've learned to just kind of dance around in our lives. Are your plants suffering? Maybe it would warrant a small look. And you see, oh, it needs fertilizer. Guitar players, do you not like how your guitar sounds? Maybe it would be worth a look to see if it needs some work or even just some new strings. Or I would imagine a lot of us have this. The check engine light in your car. It comes on, and most of us are like, oh yeah, I better get to that. And then we live with it. And then you finally go to attack this check engine light, and you find out, oh my goodness, I needed a quart of oil. And that fixed it all, and it's been screaming at me before that. So many things would just take a simple look sometimes. And I think it's a good principle to think about because I think this also goes into some real serious parts of our lives as well. Are you feeling crushed under the everyday responsibilities and stresses and anxieties? I am. Maybe that would warrant a look as well. What about your relationships? Your relationship suffering, maybe that would warrant a look. Or what about God? What about God? Do you feel far from God? Do you feel angry at God? Confused about God? Or the best question we can ask, where are you with God? Where are you with God? I think all these things are deep and would likely warrant a look. Because if we don't know, then we don't grow. So with these things, like how do you look at that? What do you do about that? This is where our parable comes in today. The good news is Jesus has shown us how to look. And so today we're going to go through the parable of the sower, like Mike was just saying. So turn with me in your Bibles to Matthew chapter 13. We're going to start in verse 3. And let's look and see how Jesus wants us to look so that we can grow. Okay, starting in verse 3. Listen! Jesus said that. But I always find that gets a good reaction too. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them across the field, some seeds fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow. But the plants soon wilted under the hot sun, and since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among the thorns that grew up and choked the tender plants. Still, other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. His disciples came to him, and this was at a later time. Disciples came to him and asked him, "Why do you use parables to talk to the people?" And he replied, "You are permitted to understand the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but others are not. To those who listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given, and they will have an abundance of knowledge. But for those who are not listening, even what little understanding they have will be taken away from them. That is why I use parables. For they look, but they don't really see. They hear, but they don't really listen or understand." Okay, so we're going to look closely at these soils today, but first we thought it would be interesting to just see where each of us feel like we are. Which of these soils do you feel that you most identify with? So pull your phones out, and if you would like to take part, this is one of the few times where you can text in church without feeling guilty. So what you're going to do is text the word soil9, here's your instructions up here, to that phone number, and you can do this if you're watching online as well. And then it's going to prompt you, and you're going to respond back with either a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Respond with a 1 if you feel like you are the compact soil, the footpath. If you feel you more identify with the shallow soil, text that in. If you feel you more identify with the crowded soil, number 3. And if you feel like you are the fertile soil, then text 4. And let's be honest, I don't want to have a bunch of teachers' pets being like, oh yeah, I'm totally the best one. And because everybody wants to be the fertile soil, right? Don't worry, be honest. This will just be an interesting way to get a cross-section of everybody who's watching. No one's going to see what you have texted. But yeah, so take part if you like to. I think that could be fun. Okay, one thing I want to clear up though. So back in verse 13, Jesus said something that is really easy to misinterpret, I think. And I think it'd be really important for us to get this right before we continue on. So in verse 13, Jesus said, "That is why I use these parables. For they look, but they don't really see. They hear, but they don't really listen or understand." How many of us have ever gotten that dreaded message, either an email or a text, that simply reads, "Can we talk?" Someone over here got one recently. Have you ever got that before? It's terrifying, right? Because all logic says, okay, I should calm down, and everything is probably fine. But where do our minds go? Our minds go like, oh no, I'm getting fired, or oh, my girlfriend's gonna break up with me. We always think the worst possible situation. Come on, anybody? Let me see your hands. Type in online if you have you been there? Please tell me I'm not the only one. Good, thank you. But it's really easy because in those moments, all we have are some characters, some words staring at us, right? There's no inflection. There's no nuance. There's nothing, not even an emoji sometimes to tell us like, oh, they're happy, they're curious, they're angry. But it's really easy in our fear to go to that place of, oh my gosh, they're angry. And in the same way, I think it's really easy for us to interpret this scripture when Jesus says, well, because they look but don't understand. It's easy to interpret it wrong. I don't think that God is saying this. Well, I'm not going to tell you. I'm only going to tell my favorite kids. Hey, favorite kids. I don't think that's what God is saying. God is saying it more like think of the heart of a loving father. Think of the heart of a loving father who loves his child and is encouraging his child to listen deeper and to come to understanding. It would sound more like, oh, you're looking, but you're not seeing. You're listening, but you're not hearing. Come on, a little bit more. You're almost there. Oh, you've almost got it. That's the heart that Jesus is communicating. Jesus wants us to understand and to respond. Amen? Jesus wants you to respond to his words. And that's your first blank here. It's important to know that Jesus spoke in parables because people didn't understand, not so they didn't understand. Jesus wasn't trying to hide this message so that people would stay on the outside. So it's really good to understand this before we go on, because Jesus is giving this parable, and essentially what he's saying is, hey, I'm telling this story, and this is you. I'm scattering these seeds, and you're listening. But the condition of your hearts is going to determine what you do with it. Some of you are going to do this. Some of you will do this. Sadly, the majority of you probably won't listen and follow and try to understand. You won't look. I want to look. And I want to find understanding. Do you? Yeah. So let's look at these soils together today, shall we? Because what do we know? We know that if you don't know, you won't grow. If you don't know, you won't grow. So let's look at this picture that Jesus gave us. The first soil he mentioned was the footpath. What do we know about a footpath? It's hard. It comes into contact with many feet, ideally. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a footpath. But what happens is the soil gets compacted down, harder and harder and more dense and more dense. And what happens is the seeds can't penetrate into the soil. Here is a picture of, a glorious picture of my lawn again. You're welcome. Vulnerability. This is right next to our rabbit hutch. And once or twice a day, every day, somebody will walk across this and go out and take care of the rabbits. We have like 6 of them. If you want one, contact me. True. Yeah, Kurt said there'll be like 36 of them very soon. So what happens is somebody walks across it every day and tamps down the soil. There is no seed that is going to penetrate this soil if I don't come and dig it up, right? Apart from some outside help, nothing's going to happen here. And that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying if your mind is closed, if you are unrelenting to his message, then the seeds of the kingdom cannot grow in you. They will not. If our minds and hearts are closed to Christ, then his good news, his message of the kingdom is not going to grow in us. And if we live in that condition, then we run the risk of not growing in Christ. And he even says that the devil comes and steals away that message from us. So if we are that hard soil, what we need is for God to come and break that soil up. Are you with me? Okay, the next soil is the shallow soil. Now, this was really common in that part of the world where you got a lot of soil on top of some hard rock. And he was saying that the seeds would come in and they would grow just fine, but then the sun would come out and it gets hot and it would scorch the plants. But because all those rocks down below are preventing the roots from growing, then those plants wouldn't survive and they would die. And Jesus is talking about people who receive his message really excited, but once persecution comes or things just get hard, then they fall away. And for me, this brought up pictures of summer camp. Who grew up going to summer camp? Anybody grew up going to summer camp? Yeah. Summer camp would be amazing, right? Because you're there, it's summertime, you're not with your parents, and you're surviving on sugar, and you're away from whatever sort of media, depending on what decade you're in, whatever sort of media existed at the time. And it was exhilarating, right? And so then all of a sudden you find yourself, and it's exciting, and you're like, yes, Jesus, I am full in. I'm all the way in. And there's nothing wrong with the excitement part of that. But what Jesus is describing here is that then later you go back to regular life where things aren't quite as exciting, and you try to work on some of those hard things, and then you kind of lose steam, and you realize that Jesus really wants to work his way into those difficult parts in our lives, but it's so hard. Have you been there? Yep. Yeah. And eventually, you might work on it for a bit, but eventually you just lose steam, and you're right back to where you were before. That's what Jesus is describing here with the shallow soil. The shallow soil, we run the risk of losing steam and just forgetting if we don't allow God to come in and take out those obstructions from our life of whatever is preventing those roots from growing deeper in our lives. That's the shallow soil. We need God to come in and help us remove that. Then third, there's the crowded soil. Jesus talked about the crowded soil. He said the seeds get scattered in the soil that's already crowded by weeds and thorns. Now here he's talking about people who receive his message and apply it, but no fruit is produced because they're so distracted by everything else in their lives. And for what it's worth, I would say this is kind of where I feel I identify the most. There's a lot in my life. And I think we all have a lot in our lives, right? Here's what's interesting about this one. If you look, the seeds were scattered to where the thorns and the weeds already existed, right? So they were already there. And it's a great metaphor for our lives because when we come to Christ, when we come to Jesus, we come with everything that we are, with our habits, with our history, with our hobbies, with everything that we are. We come to Jesus. And the beautiful thing about that is that Jesus invites us to, right? He invites everybody. He says, all who are weary, come to me. And it's beautiful. But what he wants to do is help us pull out those weeds. Because the soil that isn't dealt with, that is overcrowded with weeds, we run the risk of the voice of Jesus being drowned out from all the stuff. And that's what Jesus said happened here. The thorns choked out those plants. And I think a great example that a lot of us can probably relate to is social media. Please hear me right. I don't hate social media. I'm not saying that you should go kill your social media. But think mathematically with me for a sec. If you faithfully spend 30 minutes every morning meditating on the things of God, immersing yourself in His Word, spending time in prayer, spending time worshiping, if you do that 30 minutes every morning, and then you go to work, go to school, go to do your things, and then come back, and if you like to unwind on social media, and if you're like the statistics that say every adult spends 2.5 to 3 hours a day. And again, I'm not saying social media is the devil. But if you're a statistic like that, then it's a simple mathematical principle that TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube is then having 6 times the amount of input into your head than Jesus is. Look at this. Because I like pictures. What we put into ourselves will come out. So if I'm filling myself mostly with culture and a little bit of Bible, then naturally what's going to come out is culture. That's what's going to come out. I'm going to start looking like that rather than Christ. This is social media. Maybe you don't have a phone. Good job. Teach me your ways. But guys, this can go for anything. Jesus said the weeds and the thorns, it could be anything. This could be your hobbies. I really have to watch it when I'm buying a new guitar. That's all I think about. I think about how can I sell a few of mine? What can I get? Where am I going to buy it? I'm always checking sales. So I really got to watch out for that. But this could be anything. This could be your family. This could be your job. Business owners, this could be your business. And I understand that's hard, isn't it? Because you can't just not do business things. You can't just not run your business. So we all have things in our lives that we came to Jesus with, and we need to bring them to Him. I don't have the answers for you other than Jesus. You need to bring that to Christ and allow Him to guide you, to give you wisdom. And He will show you what things need to come out. What thorns and weeds need to come out. Because the crowded soil, if not looked at, will eventually drown out the voice of Jesus in our lives. Finally, there is the good soil that Jesus was talking about. And this is simply the seed, the soil, the person that hears the word, works to understand it, applies it, meditates on it, and then finds they're patiently producing fruit in their lives. And what's that fruit? That fruit is all over. There's all sorts of examples in Scripture. I think one of the best places to look is Galatians 5:22 and 23, where Paul is talking about the life of the Spirit living through us. He says the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives. Love. Say this with me. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There's no law against these things. I want to be that fertile soil. Do you want to be that fertile soil? That's what Jesus wants for us. Okay, maybe you texted in. Can we see the results? Hey, look at that. Ooh. Thank you for your honesty, everybody. I was worried that everybody was going to be like, oh yeah, I'm perfect. I'm in church. I think that's an interesting breakdown. It's just kind of neat to know. What are we all dealing with? The people sitting next to you, what are we all dealing with? What are we fighting through? What is God calling us out of? And whether or not you texted in, every single one of us lives in one of these boxes. Jesus said every one of us is one of these types of soil. So take a good look. Where are you? What soil are you? This is Jesus' message to us through this parable. It's not a complex message, is it? It's not complex, but it's not easy to apply, is it? It's hard. And Jesus even knew that it was hard. He knew that he wasn't describing a time of great harvest. But even Jesus painted a picture where only a quarter was productive. Only one of these soils was fertile. Only 1 out of 4 of these seeds produced fruit. So how do we do that? How do we become that fertile soil, church? What do we do? Well, first, we look. It's our secret plan. Look. Because we know if you don't know, you don't grow. So, say we do that. You look and you try to understand. Then what? Come to Jesus. Come to him, you guys. We have to admit our need. Can that soil fix itself? Can my compact bunny hutch soil till itself up? No. It needs something to intervene. And that's where we need to reach out to Jesus and invite him in, ask him in. Becoming good soil begins with admitting your need. So if you're finding that, admit that you need God to come in and help. Kurt said in his one of his devotions this week, his email devotional, the key to receiving the kingdom is realizing in my heart that I need the kingdom. Once I realize that I need it, then and only then can I receive it. So if we want to be that fertile soil, we need to realize that we can't do it on our own and that we need God's help. Jesus said in Matthew 5, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. One more time. If you don't know, you don't grow. So, church, will you look? Jesus is inviting us every day to look at the soil in our hearts so that we can follow him. I want to invite the band forward. We're going to get ready to close and to participate in communion. But I just want to ask again, will you be an understanding person? Will you be that understanding person who looks at what Jesus is saying and reflects on that? Like I said, it's not a complex message, but it's a hard message, right? But just imagine what your life would be like if you would just relent, if you would repent, if you turn to Jesus, invite him in. And the good news is that Jesus is he's always ready for you to turn to him. And if you're listening today and you haven't turned your life to Jesus, then I just want to encourage you. Today is the day. Invite Jesus in. Let him work in you. He loves you and he wants you to respond. And maybe you've already given your life to Jesus. And maybe as we're going through these soils, maybe you're finding yourself hard, shallow, crowded, whatever it might be. But just know that Jesus is always there for you to turn around and come back. Turn around. The definition of repenting is to stop what you're doing and turn the other way. Repent. Come back to Jesus and find the life that he wants to give you.